Peter Hart, thank you for joining us from London. How is life in lockdown treating you?
Oh, it's great. It's great. It's no problem at all here, really. If you're not ill, it's the opportunity to lie back and do fuck all.
And who are you in lockdown with?
With my my delightful family. So there are three women in the house and me, my wife Polly, my daughter Lily, and my other daughter Ruby, who is, what's that word? Recalcitrant.
They must be enjoying seeing more of their dad than they have for many years.
Oh, yes.
So how are you feeling your days? I hope, hopefully with lots of interesting history research.
Well, it's funny because this Australian bastard I know had commissioned me to do a book, which I had no intention of doing till the summer. But you're in lockdown, so I'm spending 5 or 6 hours a day working on the evacuation book.
Fantastic. It's a book about the Gallipoli evacuation. I'm so excited. It's the first book that we're publishing as living history. We're going to be book publishers when this thing comes out. So it's all about the Gallipoli evacuation. Tell us about it.
It's just a great story, Matt, and I've stretched it back to why they were evacuated, obviously, and then the Great Storm is just a fantastic emotional story, and if you've got any empathy in you at all, and it's just awful, and then the sort of tension before they evacuate Anzac Suva, and especially Anzac, will they get away with it, and then it all goes on to Hellas, which is actually even worse because, of course, they've already evacuated Suva and Anzac, and they get away with it again. It's just the tension of the story. There is fighting because, as usual, the British at Hellas have to make a couple of diversionary attacks and that kind of thing, and it's just a great story. I can't tell you how much I'm enjoying it, because if you hadn't given me the opportunity, then I couldn't have worked on the First World War again, because the centenary has killed off military publishing of the Great War for what you call commercial authors who have to make money from it, i.e. authors at its main time. No, I'm a poor pensioner.
Well, retired now from the Imperial Museum as well. So
I am retired.
Just in time to go to lockdown.
Well, I have this theory that actually, they have these sort of stories where the person's at the center of the universe, and there is no universe. It's only them, and they're in an isolation ward, and everything's in their imagination. And it occurred to me that when I went into when I retired, I noticed that everybody else in the bloody universe has retired. So I am at the center of the universe. I am dreaming.
Nice work. Do you know what I like about the Gallipoli book you're working on is that the evacuation is such an important part of the story, the evacuation from Gallipoli, but it never gets covered. It gets summed up in a quick couple of sentences, and then they launch this great evacuation, which was a great success. But to do it in detail, I think is really exciting.
It is. And what you often hear is you just hear endless stuff about self-firing rifles. Now, that's an interesting, the guy who invented it, great, fantastic. Lovely bit of ingenuity. We all admire that kind of thing. But is it important? Not as important as the staff work, the solid staff work, but also things like the quiet periods. And I love the quiet periods. So you just go quiet at night. And when the Turks send out for patrol, you let them come up to your wire. And then they get more and more confident. So next night they come even closer. And then you shoot them all. Now, that's terrible for the families of those poor Turks. From a modern perspective, it's remarkably clever because it means when they do go, there's a few self-loading rifles that gives them 30 minutes. That's all, 30 minutes, and then it goes quiet. But the Turks think, you're not fooling us.
Well, I can't wait to read it, mate. It's going to be fantastic. So that book's going to be out in the second half of the year. So probably August, September, we're going to see that book, which is really exciting. So the first living history book, very exciting, available exclusively to everyone out there who follows our podcasts, YouTube, everything else that we're doing. It's going to be very exciting. Speaking of books, though, your focus has been on World War II more recently, hasn't it? With the South Not Cesar.
It has. It's been delayed, but the sound version is coming out. A book, what's the bloody hell it's called? It's called something or other. At Close Range. Life and Death and Artillery.
It's always an important skill as an author to remember the name of your own books, I find.
Yes. I can't remember the name of my podcast series either. But Gary
I've noticed.
Gary has to tell me at the start of every bloody episode.
Yeah, it's called Peter Hart's Military History, both for you, Pete, and for anyone listening who wants to follow the podcast. Yeah,
it's
Peter Hart's
very
Military
difficult.
History.
How the bloody hell am I meant to remember that? Jesus. Couldn't you pick something simple like it?
So, South Notts Hussars at close.
Oh yeah,
range.
so yeah, the book's coming out next February, but the audio version's coming out in May, which is the original publishing. I did 50 interviews with South Notts Hussars back in the 90s, I think it was. Yes, my mind's it's not steel trap, my mind, is it? And they were wonderful. They were great. They were in their prime. They were about my age, between 65 and 75 when I interviewed them. So they were in good condition. Because interviewing 95-year-olds has its value, but it's not quite the same value as interviewing them when they're in their prime, which I am. And so I mean, it just putting that together has been great. And the added great thing for me was I started the other thing I've been doing is working on the next book, which is the Fife and Forfar Yeomanry, a second Fife and Forfar Yeomanry, which are a tank bunch. And again, I did 50 interviews with them, and that's the next book. But of course, that's been postponed. Well, I mean, it's going to come out. I was meant to hand it in August next year, and I was doing your book. So everything's been brought forward with your books, and that's been put on the back burner till the summer. If hope we're out of this, then
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if people want to know the story of the South Notts Hussars, which they should, because it's fascinating, the podcast Peter Hart's Military History regularly features them. And the thing I love about it, Pete, is that it's a rare opportunity to speak to a large number of men from the same unit. Which
it is.
It's a lovely cup, by the way.
And I never got to drink out of it. The stories are great, and the individuals shine through it in the book, and I hope in the podcast. The podcasts have been great fun. That was your initiative to start that before this all blew up. And I do it with a chap called Gary Bain, who is like a sort of disreputable uncle to me. He says he's the eye candy, and you can see I'm not. Gary is sort of he interviews me a bit like you're interviewing me, and tries to get the best out of me, tries to remind me of what the podcast's called, things like that, vital jobs like that. But also he provides a knowledge and a great sense of humor that I think bring it to life.
It does. It works so well. The two of you together, it's brilliant. As I said, it's like two blokes down at the pub having a chat about military history. It's fantastic.
Yeah, we love it. And that we've been doing one a week. We're obviously 6 or 7 weeks ahead, because otherwise you can't allow for what's going to happen. And we've been doing sort of one every 4, 5, 6 weeks on South Notts Hussars. But we've been trying to do one Gallipoli topic, because that's, for you, me, and Gary, that's really where we start our interest.
Always, yeah, absolutely.
But also covering other things, spin-off things like Monash, because I read Peter Pedersen's brilliant book on it, that kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then things like I'm taking a tour group to Sicily. I'm not, clearly. But we did a couple of them, Sicily. The anniversary of Waterloo's coming up. We went to Waterloo, me and Gary, Gary and I do apologise. About whenever it was, 2 years ago, and we loved it. Have you been, Matt?
I've never been to Waterloo. No, it's a gap in my battlefield repertoire.
It's fantastic, Matt, and you'd love it. And because it's all still there. So many First World War battles have been ruined. They built a mound, which Wellington said it ruined his ridge, but it hasn't ruined it. It's he was just a bad-tempered old fart, really, himself.
That's the quote of the video is Wellington was a bad-tempered old fart. And long may he be remembered as such. Pete, I have to say you've got a remarkable collection of books there behind you, and I see the word Gallipoli on many of those spines. So I'm sure you would have set this up just for this video, that you'll be able to reach around now and instantly put your hand on my Gallipoli book, which I'm sure...
you're in the guidebooks, man.
Within reach. I promise everyone watching I didn't set this up with Peter. See how he does. Oh, great success. Great success. Except it's the old edition. I'll have to send you the updated one. Well done, Peter. That wasn't a setup. For anyone who's watching, that was not a setup. I was trying to put Peter on the spot. I was trying to embarrass you then, and you came through gloriously.
But mate, you sent me a long email about how I was to have it within arm's reach.
Oh, okay. There's a segment I want to do in this. This is the first episode, but there's a segment I want to do, which is a show and tell. You know, what's something you have there that, you know, means a lot to you, that's helping you get through the dark days of isolation? What have you got to show us from your collection?
Well, what it is, it's a book.
Okay.
Because I don't collect military stuff, and also, you know, you're not allowed to take stuff home from Gallipoli. So, you know, I've seen some wonderful things at Gallipoli, but we tell all our people you can't take things home because you'll get arrested. And I believe the searches can be a little intrusive.
Yes. So don't get creative about where you hide your spent cartridges from Gallipoli. They'll find them.
That's it. Now, this is the book. It's this book. Now, it's just an ordinary book. Oh, sorry, I'm not entirely. It's called At Suvla Bay. It's by John Hargreaves. It came out about 1970, whatever. No, later than that. But what I love about this is it was two brothers bought this book, and then I don't know why I leave a thing in, and then oh, sorry, wrong camera. And then they annotated all the way through, Harry and the other one,
Wow.
and Hubert Clark, and all the way through the book, they add little notes. I found one before, which I meant to put a thing in.
These are presumably guys that served at Gallipoli.
Yeah. They were in, they were in a, so it's not very good for, see the notes?
I see there in the margins. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. And it's all the way through. They've written stuff. And, you know, what I like about it is I haven't read it yet. I've sort of saved it, and I'm going to get stuck into it, you know, and possibly do an article or even a podcast on the two brothers if I can find more about them. I like one bit where they're talking about buying melons from. I just saw that today. I'm not pretending, you know, they're buying melons from a Greek down at Suvla Bay, you know, and one of the brothers wrote, "Yeah, it gave me dysentery as well," because John Hargreaves had to. You see, for me, look at that. Sorry, I don't know whether you can see it because I'm holding it up.
Oh, there's notes all through it. It's
extraordinary. And do you see why I love it? And
that's brilliant.
And for me, you know, that's just these two guys served in a different battery. They were with 33rd Field Ambulance of 11th Division, and they're from Nottingham. I bought it in Nottingham, and it's published in 1916. You know,
wow.
So for me, this is quite a precious thing. Hargreaves wrote another book, which is up there somewhere, in 1960s about Suvla Bay, but it's basically a summary of the official history. It's not that good, you know, but that is very special. And I think this is an important point for collectors. When I die, that's going to the War Museum.
Brilliant.
Do you see what I mean? Not sold. That most of my books, bugger them, will sell, you know, because the War Museum just sell things anyway. But that should be in a proper collection, and I think this is a point for everybody.
Give it to me and I'll pass it on.
I'll have a drink this time.
It's a fantastic item because I love personal connections. You know me, Pete. You know that I love personal connections with what went on. How good was it the time when we were on Dead Man's Ridge and you played me the tape of the man in there who'd been wounded on Dead Man's Ridge at Gallipoli, and then we looked down and we found charger clips from 303 rifles where the men had been they'd been loading their ammunition on that spot where we were standing.
I have to admit, I think you found that. I never find anything.
We were there together, but I mean that there was only fighting there on the one day on that.
No, absolutely. Dead Man's Ridge.
Yeah. So, but I wanted to show something as well, which is actually in the same vein. We've coordinated this very well. This is something I wanted to show off, which I think you will like, Pete. You have not seen before. I'm going to hold this up here. Can you see that?
Oh, well, yeah. I can't read it though.
It says Armadale CT.
Communication trench.
Yeah, so Armadale is an original First World War trench sign from Armadale is a town in northern New South Wales. So the Australians, that's the side of an old ammo tin or something, the Australians hung this up in Armadale Communication Trench during the First World War. So they knew how they were getting around because obviously the trenches were like cities. You know, there were thousands and thousands of trenches, so they had to have names. So the Aussies called this one Armadale. And I love here, even on the back, you probably find it hard to read, but even on the back, It says
AAF France,
AIF France, 1916, Pozières Communications local trench sign. And do you know what I love even more about this? Is that I looked this up. So the veteran who brought it back, who souvenired it off the wall and brought it back, wrote that he souvenired it from Pozières. And do you know what I love about that? You'll relate to this, Pete. He got it completely wrong. I looked and looked and looked. There was no Armadale Trench anywhere at Pozières. Armadale Trench was in between Bilbao and Hamel from 1918. So I love that. He carried this around in his backpack. He brought it home with him. He hung it on the wall. Eventually he went, oh, I'm getting old. I better write where I found this, and got it completely wrong. I absolutely love that.
One of the things about
I don't do a lot of collecting, but that is one of my most prized things that I have.
That is brilliant.
Personal connection.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I just think these things sort of bring it to life. I haven't got the money for militaristic collecting anyway. I don't like medal collecting, although good luck to those who do, and a lot of them who do great research about the medals they collect. That's fabulous. But books for me are where it's at. But that's a fantastic personal thing. And you knew the veteran, or did you just get it afterwards?
I didn't. I bought it from another collector, but years ago. I mean, God knows how much it's worth now. But you said it. You said it very well. Bringing it to life. That's the important thing. That's whenever I don't collect much stuff, but when I do, it's because it brings it to life, and that's the stuff that it's important. That's what we do. That's the work that we do, is bringing dusty old chapters of history that are long gone back to life. That's what I love about what we do, Pete. It's great. I was so lucky to work for the War Museum, because I was their oral historian for 39 years. Man and boy, longer than you've been alive, Matt. And you're very kind.
I mean, I think you only saw. I think I remember one or two veterans, First World War veterans.
Yeah, absolutely. I met one First World War veteran in the time since I probably met others before I was interested in it, but in the time that I've been studying it actively, I only met one veteran.
And thanks to my job, and thanks to the War Museum, I interviewed 150, 160 of them in detail, with people like Joe Murray, who's on the internet. Look him up. Just type in Joseph Murray, IWM, and it'll come out. You can listen to all 42 reels. That's 22 hours of it. And what a job, and that's what. But funnily enough, that sign you just showed us, that sums it up. Just because somebody says something doesn't mean it's true. And oral history is great at feelings, about how things were. It's good at things like shitting yourself when you've got dysentery. It's great, because funnily enough, you don't write that home to your mum, do you? Dear mum, shat myself again today. Dear, oh dear, or to the girlfriend. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So, oral history picks up a lot of that stuff, because, that's what they remember. I mean, I can't describe to you how ill they were, for instance, at Gallipoli. And that personal experience, but when they tell you where a battalion was on a certain day, or where a trench sign came from, I mean, they're likely to be away with the fairies, because it's not testimony. I never think of it as testimony. Best thing to think of it is old men waffling on with some really good and interesting stuff in it, if you can be bothered to listen and check it. But it's all
a summary of your podcast as well, Pete.
Oops, I'm doing a
No. I always love catching up with you, Pete, and it's great work that you've done at the Imperial War Museum. Lots of great work to come. Some good books. Looking forward to the Revelation book and the other ones coming up. Mate, thanks for taking the time. I'm sure we'll be talking to you on podcasts or videos or something again in the near future. But thanks for being a part. It's been great.
Cheers, Matt. Thank you very much. Sarah, mate.